What's up everybody, my name is Brendan and this is BigBearB Creative. Welcome back everybody to another Friday landscape photography how-to tutorial type video. As you probably saw in the thumbnail before you actually clicked on this video, or if you searched for this video, thanks for searching, hope you enjoy. But yes, today we're going to be talking about the best lenses for landscape photography. And as photographers, we either have a bunch of lenses in our Amazon shopping cart that we haven't purchased yet, but we're thinking about pulling the trigger on, or we have too many than what we know what to do with on our shelves at home. So we want to figure out what is the best lenses. Do we need to carry all 18 of these with us when we go shop, or when we go, not shopping, when we go out on our hikes to actually capture our landscape photos, or do we really just need a couple of them, or what are the best lenses, or what are the best lenses? So we're going to break these down based off of 4 criteria, and that's going to be versatility, accountability, budget, and ease of travel. And budget is a huge one, as landscape photography can be a very expensive hobby, job, career, whatever it is that you guys are doing the landscape photography for. It could be very expensive. So we're going to keep budget in mind with these. So I'm going to kind of break down different lenses, whether they be what I call brand name lenses or alternative brands or things like that. And then I'll give you a couple other alternatives at the end, a little like bonus kind of tip, I guess you could say, for the actual lenses that I'm going to give you. So let's start off with versatility. And basically that starts with a huge, I don't say huge, but a very common debate that you're going to find amongst photographers of all kinds. And that's going to be prime lenses versus zoom lenses. And typically prime lenses are going to give you better quality images, or higher quality images, but they're not very versatile. And I'll go a little bit in depth here on why. My phone just went off. I'm going to silence that real quick. But yeah, I'm going to tell you a little bit about why zoom lenses are the best lenses for landscape photography, and that's all due to versatility. Because if you're shooting on a prime lens and you're already waist deep in a body of water, and you take 1 or 2 steps forward or 1 or 2 steps back and you end up drowning your camera, that sucks. You're gonna have to go buy a new camera because you just basically broke yours trying to get a shot just because you only had that prime lens. Or let's say you're on the edge of a cliff trying to get a nice photo of the ocean coming crashing waves or something onto a cliff. You take 1 step forward to get that proper composition, and now you're joining that water and cliff edge, which again you don't want to do. So shooting with a zoom lens, you either zoom in to get that composition you're looking for, you can zoom out, versus if you're using that prime lens, you have to zoom with your feet. You have to get closer or further away. And sometimes, like those examples show, it's not possible. So zoom lenses are always best for landscape photography. So then the next one is going to be accountability. And basically that just goes down to the build of the lens. Now, we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it's going to come down to basically the name brand versus the alternative brands that you're going to buy. Because typically the brand name ones are going to be a little bit more expensive, but they're going to be a lot of a more high quality build. They're going to give you a higher quality image, versus the alternative ones that are going to be a little bit less in the quality, a little bit lower in the quality, but a lot of times they're also still really good. So you kind of just have to research. Again, I'll tell you all about that when we actually talk about the specific lenses, but you're going to need to do your research when it comes to alternative ones to keep your budget in mind, which was the 3rd criteria, because you can't go blow on your budget on lenses and having, a whole shelf full of lenses at home that you basically took all your budget to travel. So now you can't actually do your landscape photography. So you're just staying at home with all these lenses that you can't use. And then if you have that budget to travel, ease of travel isn't going to be very easy when you have 18 lenses sitting on your shelf that you're like, I might need this one, I might need this one. You end up packing 6 or 7 lenses, one that's going to be a lot of weight. It's going to mean you're going to have to carry at least 2 bags, because there's no way you could fit all of your camera equipment into 1 bag if you're carrying 6 or 7 lenses. So when it comes to the amount of lenses that I believe you should be using, that is 2. You just need 2 zoom lenses of high accountability, because that's going to make your ease of travel, which is again that 4th criteria or criterion, I don't know, I need to go back to my English there. But yeah, it's gonna go back to that ease of travel, because if you're just having to bring 2 lenses with you, that's gonna be a lot easier for you because they're gonna be lighter, it's gonna take up less space in your bag. Or it can mean that you could even bring more things with you because you had to leave things out to account for all the lens space that you're gonna need. So if you're just bringing those 2 lenses, it's gonna be lighter, gonna be easier to travel with, less things you have to worry about. So those are the 4 criteria and why they come to kind of create this whole video and why I chose these 2 lenses. So before I keep you waiting anymore, what are these 2 lenses? Again, because there's only 2 and they're both zoom. And that's going to be the 16 to 35 and the 100 to 400 millimeter. Now again, now I know that's a big gap that you're going to have between the 35 and the 100, but typically in landscape photography, you're either shooting very wide or you're getting that very zoomed in, super telephoto, intimate landscape photo. So really you're not really going to need that 35 to 100. However, if you are shooting on a crop sensor camera, you're going to be covering some of that middle ground, because that 35 millimeter is not actually going to be a 35 millimeter. It's going to be 35 millimeter time whatever your crop factor is. So you're actually going to cover that area that you're kind of missing. You're going to be a little bit lower, or you're not going to have as much of that wide shot, but there's ways to counteract that by shooting a panorama or anything like that. So there's ways to counteract that so that you're actually getting the full focal range that you're kind of want to cover the whole spectrum. But again, the 16 to 35 and the 100 to 400 millimeters are what you're actually going to need. So why do I like these? Why are I suggesting that you get these? Because again, this is all my opinion here, but these are fantastic lenses to use, and that goes down to that, again, those 4 criteria that I was listing. So versatility, like I mentioned, landscape photography, you're shooting wide, or you're really zooming in on the telephoto, super telephoto, whatever it is that you're shooting. So it could be a tree, it could even be an animal. It doesn't have to be just landscape photography. Wildlife photographers as well could really utilize that 100 to 400 millimeter, because one, it's going to let them get a nice zoomed in photo of the subject that they're shooting, but it's also going to give them, if it's a more non-human friendly animal, it's going to give them plenty of space in between them so that they stay safe, or you stay safe as the wildlife photographer. Or if it's more of a docile animal, it's going to allow you to give them more space. If they're more of a shy creature, give them plenty of space, so that way they don't feel threatened and feel under attack by you being there. So it's going to give you that plenty of space. Now, if there are those wildlife creatures that do approach humans, are pretty chill with us, you could switch on over to that 16 to 35 and either get a nice full body image of them, or you could even go even wider and get them plus whatever their surrounding is. So again, shooting with the 16 to 35 and the 100 to 400, that's really going to give you a great amount of versatility and let you shoot a whole bunch of different things, which again is that first of 4 criteria. Then again, accountability. And again, that all goes into the brand name versus the alternative brands. And typically for landscape photography, I see most people shooting on a Sony, Canon, Nikon, some Fujifilms. I've seen Fujifilms come out a little bit more strongly, especially with the X-T3 that came out. That's one of the cameras I want to get. But so those are what I mean by brand names, those big name camera manufacturers. And then you're going to have those alternative ones that are going to be like the Sigma or the Tamron that you could also get that will go along with those cameras. They still mount perfectly fine to your camera and produce pretty good quality images, but they're going to be a little bit lesser in build quality, a little bit lower quality of the photo itself too. But they're typically going to be a lot cheaper, and I'll save price for a whole other section of this, because again, budget is very important. So that also goes in with the budget. You have a bunch of different options to shoot with for these lenses. You could either have, again, those brand names, or you could have the alternative brands. But again, just shooting with just these 2, you're gonna get all that versatility and a much easier travel package, I guess, because again, you're only packing 2. Now the 16 to 35 is a very light lens. It's smaller, more compact, so you can put that in your bag no problem. The 100 to 400 is a very big lens. It's one of those ones that when you put on your camera and then you go to put it on your tripod, you don't connect the camera body to the tripod, you connect the actual lens to the tripod. You guys like this hand movement here? But yeah, it's one of those really big ones, but it's going to be, again, a lot easier to pack that when it'll be lighter than lugging around 8 different lenses that would cover the same focal range. But so it's going to take up less space. It's going to be lighter because it's not a bunch of different lenses. So you could also, again, include some of that other accessories that you might have kept at home, maybe some filters, some remotes, or anything like that, to just make sure you have everything you'll need for your shot by just carrying these 2 lenses. So those are the criteria. Now, again, like I said, I was going to separate price because that's a very big, very important one. Let me adjust my glasses here because they're falling. So pricing for these lenses, it's a huge deal because it's really going to make or break your budget. So I'm going to break these down each for you, kind of give you a little bit of detail about the lens and why it's kind of that price. So if you're a Sony shooter, you're going to hate me here because the prices are going to be the most expensive out of all of the brand names and alternative brands for these lenses, but the quality is fantastic, both of the build and for the actual image quality that you're going to get. It's fantastic. So Sony shooters, for the 16 to 35, you're going to be shooting on an f2.8, which is fantastic, which is also going to mean you're shooting, or the lens is going to be a little bit more expensive, and that's actually going to come in at $2,200. So very expensive for one singular lens, but again, we're just having 2 lenses, so overall it'll end up being cheaper than all having 10 or however many lenses you might end up having that would cover the same amount of focal range. So it's $2,200 for that f2.8. Canon, they also have an f2.8 16 to 35, and that's going to be about $1,800. So cheaper, but you're still having that very high quality build and image that comes from it. And then for Nikon, it's actually going to be the cheapest. It's going to be $1,100, but it's only an f4. So you're losing out on some of that super wide aperture, but you don't always need that for landscape photography. And then for Fujifilm people, since they are growing very rapidly in landscape photography, and I love the X-T3, I'll throw in your price as well. You're also going to be shooting on the f2.8, but it's going to be $1,300. So you're going to typically be in between Nikon and Canon in terms of pricing, but quality, again, will always kind of vary depending on how those individual lenses were built. So if those prices are too much for you, because it's either going to be $1,100 to $2,200 that you'd have to spend, check out the alternative brands like Sigma and Tamron, because they're going to be spending about half of what you're going to be spending for the Nikon lenses. So for the Sigma lens, it's actually an f1.8, and that's going to be about $625. And then the Tamron, they're going to have an f2.8 that's going to be about $600. So much cheaper, about half the price of the Nikon ones. But again, the lens quality is going to be a little bit lower, including the build and the image quality. However, they're still going to be very nice. So if that better fits within your budget and what you need for your landscape photography, check those ones out. I always recommend researching the alternative brand lenses to make sure the quality is what you need for either your clients, for the photo prints that you're doing, or whatever it is that you do landscape photography for. But it's a great alternative for those brand names that are just too expensive for some budgets. And again, I completely understand that. I'll talk a little bit towards the end of the focal ranges that you could also use to replace these ones for a little bit cheaper, and ones that I use sometimes instead of these. So that's the f16 to 35. But what about the 100 to 400? They're going to be a little bit more expensive, as you might assume, because you have a very wide focal range. So for Sony, you're going to be shooting, again, that 100 to 400, but it's going to be an f4.5 to 5.6. Yes, an f4.5 to 5.6, but it's going to be $2,500. So again, very expensive. It's going to be, again, that big lens that you attach straight to the tripod, but it's a very high quality. It's their G Master lens, which means it's amazing. It's one of the best lenses that's available out there. It's going to give you great quality build, great quality photos that you're taking, but it's going to be a much higher price. So Canon, you're going to be getting a little bit of a nicer price. Again, very similar quality build and overall image quality, and that's going to be at around $22. Yeah, and that's going to be around $2,200. So again, a little bit cheaper, still a very high quality image. Now Nikon, they don't actually have a 100 to 400, but they do have a 200 to 500. So you're going to get that same focal range, but it's going to be just slightly more telephoto. But you're going to get it at a much cheaper price, because instead of having it at an f4.5 to 5.6, it's just an f5.6, which for me is perfectly fine, because I typically don't shoot lower than that for a landscape photography photo shoot or anything like that, just because I don't like blurring things too much in the background or in the foreground, because I feel like it just creates a little bit too much noise and distracts people. So an f5.6 is perfect for me. I hope it's perfect for you guys too. By the way, I still think this is a great lens, especially for those Nikon shooters, but it's also going to come in at a much cheaper price. Unlike the Sony that's $2,500, this Nikon lens is actually more than $1,000 cheaper at $1,400. So just by taking down that the f-stop that you can shoot at, by just narrowing down a little bit, you're getting basically $1,000 off for a much more zoomed in lens, which is really fantastic. Of course, you're going to have a bigger gap in between the 200 to 35, but you get rid of that crop sensor, 35 is actually going to be a little bit more zoomed in, so you end up being perfectly fine, and we'll get a very nice intimate landscape photography shoot with a 200 to 500. Of course, they also have other options. They sell a 70 to 300, I think they have a 70 to 200, they have a 55 to 200, so you have plenty of other options instead of doing the 200 to 500 that are also going to give you a very nice zoomed in telephoto camera option, again, for that versatility. And then for Fujifilm, again, you're going to have that f4.5 to 5.6, which is, again, a very nice aperture range, but it's going to be a little bit more expensive there. And they do have a 100 to 400, and that comes in at about $1,900. So again, you're in between that Canon and Nikon. This one's going to be a little bit more expensive, but again, the quality of the cameras, the more expensive they are, not the cameras, the lenses, the more expensive they are, the more they're going to cost, or obviously the more they're going to cost. The more expensive they are, the higher quality build and the higher quality images you're going to get out of it. But again, we do have those alternatives. Now, the alternative for Nikon, they do have that 100 to 400, and again, it's going to come in much cheaper. So both the Tamron and Sigma, they have an f4.5 to 6.3. So at that higher range, you are going to have a more narrow aperture. But again, with landscape photography, we're typically shooting at like an f8 to an f11. So there's no issue there. So you will get a little bit of that blur with the 6.3. It's not going to be as much as the f4.5 or the f5.6, but you're still going to get a little bit of it if that's kind of your style with landscape photography, so you don't have to worry there. But again, you're going to get it at that much cheaper price. So for the Tamron lens, you're going to get that one for about $800. And then for the Sigma, it's going to be about $720. So much cheaper, again, about half the price of the Nikon one. Again, that'll come with a little bit of a lower build quality and image quality, but that doesn't mean it's going to be drastically different. Again, I would always suggest that you research these alternative brands if that's the price range that best fits your budget and allows you to still go out and travel. Now, we've talked about the lenses, we talked about those prices. If those lenses and the prices that go with them are still a little bit too much for you, even if they're the alternative ones, and again, I get it, landscape photography is a very expensive hobby, career, job, whatever it is for you, there are a couple alternative focal ranges that you can use that will give you the same kind of feel, but at a much cheaper price. So instead of shooting that 16 to 35, stick with your kit lens. An 18 to 55 is still a fantastic range for focal range that you're gonna get, and a lot of them are still gonna have a fairly decent aperture range. So it'll either be an f3.5, an f4 to like a 5.6 or something like that, which again is still fantastic for landscape photography. So stick with that. If you happen to buy your camera, your DSLR, and it didn't come with an but if it didn't come with that 18 to 55, you could, for Nikon and Canon, you could buy that lens for about $100, which is very cheap for lenses. Now, Sony, they don't actually have an 18 to 55, they have a 28 to 70, so you're gonna get more of that middle ground that you're losing out on with that 35, but it's going to be a little bit more expensive. I believe that one is about $400. And then again, Fuji, they have an 18 to 55, but unlike the other ones that is typically that f3.5 or f4 to 5.6 or anything like that, it actually shoots at a much wider aperture. So for that one, it's going to be the Fuji one, 18 to 55, it's actually an f2.8 up. So again, that's gonna mean it's gonna be a little bit more expensive because the lower number of f-stop you have, the more expensive the lens is gonna be, but that's gonna mean it's a much higher quality. So it's a fantastic lens, it's a fantastic lens, but it's gonna come in more around $700. So again, a lot more expensive. It's gonna be closer to the same price range as the 16 to 35 for the alternative brands, but this time it's a name brand, so a little bit higher build quality. So you can check that out if you're interested in kind of switching up the 16 to 35. For the 100 to 200, or not 100, the 100 to 400, the alternative one for that, and it's one that I use, is a 55 to 200, because I don't need as much of a zoom. Sometimes I wish I had a little bit more zoom, but for what I shoot right now, it's perfectly fine. I get still really good quality images shooting it. I actually think I use that lens more than I use my 18 to 55 for that, again, cheaper option. So a 55 to 200, fantastic option. Again, it's going to be a little bit cheaper than what you're going to get for that 100 to 400, again, because it's just a, I would say more basic lens, but a slightly, it's like an intermediate between basic and those very expensive, like the G Master, Sonys, and all that kind of stuff. So it's a nice middle ground that you can find there. And again, all the brand names are available for these. So if you're shooting on a Sony, Canon, or Nikon, you could get this focal range lens for about $200 to $300. So again, it's a step up from that 100, but it's a much better lens. So again, Fuji, this is the one time actually Fuji is going to be a lot more expensive than, like, instead of being in between the Nikon and Canon like they were earlier with the more advanced lenses, this time Fuji's is on top. But this lens actually comes in again a little bit higher at 700. So it's the same as their 18 to 55, but again, they had that better aperture. It's the same here. For these other, the Sony, Canon, and Nikons, they're an f4.5, but Fuji's is actually an f3.5. So again, when it comes to lenses, if you're shooting with a wider aperture, they have a wider aperture available, they're gonna be more expensive, which means also the build quality is gonna be a little bit higher. So these are the lenses that I like. You have the 16 to 35 and the 100 to 400. I think these are the best landscape photography lenses. If those are a little bit too expensive for you, either the name brand or the alternative brand of those, step it down. Go to the 18 to 55 kit lens and the 55 to 200 zoom lens that, again, are going to have a great versatility, great compatibility. Budget's going to be a lot better, which means you're going to be traveling a lot more, and they're a lot easier to travel with because instead of having to attach those ones to your actual tripod, you just connect it to your camera and the camera goes right on there. So they're much lighter, they're smaller, they're a fantastic option if those other ones are a little bit too expensive for you. So let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are. If you guys agree with these lenses, if there's ones that you'd rather replace the focal ranges with, let me know down in the comment section. I'd love to kind of discuss what kind of ones we use. Who knows, you might even change my opinion on one of these. You guys could also check me out on my social media. I'll display them here. You could tag me in your photos, send me your photos. We talk about what kind of focal range you were using. We can find out which focal ranges we are all using more so we can better find the best, again, landscape photography lenses for our cameras, our shoots. Again, I still think the 16 to 35 and the 100 to 400 is perfect. Step it down to the 18 to 55 and the 55 to 200. You're going to get all the entire range from basically 18 to 200 with that aspect or that grouping. So those are great. And if you guys are enjoying these videos, let me know by hitting that subscribe button down below. I release these Friday how-to tutorials every Friday. I try to get Sunday photo editing videos or just a special video out on Sundays. Sometimes it doesn't happen. It hasn't happened for the last couple of weeks and probably won't happen this week because, again, I am working on that movie, so it's taking up a lot of time. And today I was actually planning on going out and shooting, but the weather said no and just put a whole huge downpour came down. I actually kind of scared one of my dogs because she doesn't like crackling noise like fireworks. She hates them. There was a lot of thunder. She hated it. She didn't like it. Yeah, so that kind of ruined this one. So there probably won't be a video out this Sunday. Hopefully we will have one soon. So if you guys are enjoying these, make sure you're verifying that like button. It really goes a long way in telling me that you're enjoying these videos and keep making more of these for you guys. It also helps push it out to other people who enjoy this kind of content as well. And before you go, 2 links I want you guys to check out. If you like this shirt, it's really cool. I like it. Obviously I like it. I designed it. You guys can find the shirt down below, again, in the description box. You find it at BigBearBCreative.com/eco apparel, along with a bunch of other designs. And then also make sure you guys are checking out my photo prints page for all the photo prints that I offer for you guys to buy. That's going to be on BigBearBCreative.com/prints. So if you guys are liking this shirt, if you guys want some eco-conscious shirts, make sure you're checking these out. They're also available in long sleeves, hoodies, and tote bags. You should make sure you're checking out that link. If you want some photo prints, check that out. Thank you guys for watching this video. Hope you guys have a great day. Be safe during this time and go be creative.